I used to think family was everything. The word itself carried weight. A promise of unconditional love. A tether to something bigger than yourself. Growing up in the sprawling Hartwell estate, surrounded by oak trees and the hum of privilege, I believed my family was unbreakable. My parents, Richard and Eleanor Hartwell, were the pillars of our small-town philanthropists. Churchgoers. The kind of people who hosted charity galas and smiled for every camera. My older sister, Clara, was their golden child. Sharp-tongued and ambitious. Already climbing the corporate ladder at 28. And then there was me, Daniel, the quiet one. The dreamer who never quite fit the mold they cast for me. I didn't mind. I had Sarah, my wife, my anchor, the woman who made every sacrifice I'd ever made worthwhile. But family, I learned, can be a blade that cuts deeper than any stranger's cruelty. And when they turned that blade on Sarah, I stopped being their son. I became something else entirely, their karma. It started at one of those insufferable family dinners. The dining room was a cathedral of excess crystal chandelier glinting, mahogany table polished to a mirror shine, and the air thick with the scent of roasted lamb and my mother's Chanel perfume. Sarah sat beside me, her hand resting lightly on mine under the table, her smile polite but strained. She'd always been an outsider here, her modest upbringing a stark contrast to the Hartwell legacy. They never let her forget it. Not with their subtle jabs about her simple taste or the way they'd raise their eyebrows when she spoke. But that night, they crossed a line I didn't know existed until it was shattered. Clara, wine glass in hand, leaned forward with that smirk she wore like a crown. "So, Sarah," she said, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Still no news on the baby front. I mean, it's been, what, 3 years?" Tick-tock. The room went silent, forks pausing midair. My mother's lips twitched into a smile she didn't bother to hide. My father coughed, but it wasn't discomfort, it was amusement. Sarah's hand tightened around mine, her knuckles widening. I felt the heat rise in my chest. But before I could speak, Sarah answered, her voice steady despite the tremor I knew was there. "We're trying, Clara. It's not something we control." Clara laughed. A sharp, cutting sound. "Oh, honey, maybe it's time to stop trying. Some women just aren't meant to be mothers. You know. No offense. No offense." Those words hung in the air like smoke, choking me. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to say something. Anything. To rein Clara in. But my mother just sipped her wine, and my father muttered something about dessert. They didn't care. They never had. Sarah's infertility. The doctor's visits. The nights we'd spent holding each other through the grief of another negative test. They'd known about it all, and they'd chosen to weaponize it. I felt something snap inside me, a thread I'd been clinging to my whole life. Family was supposed to protect you, not tear you apart. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. "We're leaving," I said, my voice low but shaking with rage. Sarah looked up at me, her eyes wide. But she didn't argue. She never did. In the car, the silence was deafening. Sarah stared out the window, her hands folded tightly in her lap. I wanted to say something, to apologize for them, for letting her walk into that viper's nest again. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I drove, the headlights cutting through the dark like the anger burning through me. "I'm done with them," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah turned to me, her eyes glistening. "You don't mean that, Dan. They're your family." I shook my head. "No. You're my family. They're just people I used to know." She reached for my hand, and I felt the weight of her trust. her love, anchoring me. But beneath it, something darker was growing, a need not just to walk away, but to make them feel the pain they'd inflicted, to make them pay. The next morning, I sat at our kitchen table, a cup of coffee gone cold in my hands. Sarah was still asleep, exhausted from the night before. I couldn't stop replaying Clara's words, my parents' silence, the way they'd looked at Sarah like she was defective, less than. I'd spent my life trying to please them, to live up to the Hartwell name. I'd gone to the college they chose, worked at my father's firm, smiled at their galas even when I hated every second of it. And for what? To watch them humiliate the woman I loved. No, I wasn't their son anymore. I was something else, a man with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. I started digging. My father's firm, Hartwell Enterprises, was the heart of their empire, a real estate juggernaut built on deals and connections. But I'd worked there long enough to know that not every deal was clean. There were whispers, corners cut, regulations ignored, competitors strong-armed. I'd ignored them before, chalked it up to business. But now, those whispers were a weapon. I spent weeks combing through old files, emails, anything I could access from my time at the firm. I didn't know what I was looking for. Not exactly. But I knew there was something. There had to be. And then I found Ida's series of transactions from 5 years ago, buried in a folder marked closed accounts. Payments to a shell company. Vague invoices. Numbers that didn't add up. It was a thread. Thin but real. And I pulled. The deeper I went, the uglier it got. The shell company led to a contractor who'd been paid to bypass environmental regulations on a major development project. My father's signature was on every document. Clara's too. They'd known. They'd profited. And they buried it. I felt a sick satisfaction, like a hunter closing in on prey. This wasn't just about Sarah anymore. It was about every lie they'd told. Every person they'd stepped on to build their perfect image. I wasn't sure what I'd do with the information yet. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let them walk away clean. Sarah noticed the change in me. She'd catch me staring at my laptop late at night. My jaw tight. My hands clenched. "Dan, what are you doing?" She'd ask. Her voice soft but worried. I'd brush it off. Tell her I was just working through some things. But she knew me too well. One night, she sat across from me, her eyes searching mine. "This isn't you," she said. "This anger. This obsession. You're scaring me." Her words hit like a punch. But I couldn't stop. "Not yet. They hurt you, Sarah," I said. "They don't get to just walk away from that." She reached for my hand, her touch grounding me, but only for a moment. "I don't need revenge," she said. "I just need you." I wanted to believe her, but the fire in me was too strong. I wasn't just fighting for her anymore. I was fighting for me. I spent the next month unraveling the Hartwell empire from the shadows. My father's firm was a labyrinth of secrets, and I navigated it like a man possessed. I'd wake before dawn, poring over documents in our cramped apartment, the glow of my laptop the only light in the room. Sarah would stir in bed, her breathing soft, and I'd feel a pang of guilt for the distance growing between us. But I couldn't stop. Every email, every ledger, was another piece of the puzzle. The shell company, Triton Holdings, was the key. It wasn't just a front, it was a pipeline for dirty money, funneled through offshore accounts to hide my father's shortcuts. Clara's involvement was deeper than I'd expected. She wasn't just signing off on deals. She was orchestrating them, her ambition as ruthless as my father's greed. I started cross-referencing dates, names, anything that could tie them to the violations. It was slow, meticulous work, But every discovery fueled me. I wasn't their son anymore. I was their reckoning. I started reaching out to old contacts, people I'd met at the firm who'd always seemed uneasy about the way things were run. One of them, a former accountant named Greg, agreed to meet me at a diner on the edge of town. He was nervous, his eyes darting around as he slid into the booth across from me. "You sure you want to dig into this, Dan?" he asked, his voice low. "Your family, they don't play nice when they're cornered." I leaned forward, my hand steady on the table. "I'm not playing," I said. "Tell me what you know." He hesitated, then slid a USB drive across the table. "Emails, invoices, some internal memos. It's not everything, but it's enough to cause trouble." I took the drive, my heart pounding. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. He shrugged, his face tired. "I worked for your father for 10 years. Never got so much as a thank you. You're not the only one they've hurt." Back home, I plugged the drive into my laptop and opened the files. It was a gold mine, proof of bribes, falsified reports, even a whistleblower complaint that had been buried. My father had paid off a city official to push through the development project, a luxury condo complex that had displaced dozens of families. Clara had handled the PR, spinning it as urban renewal while knowing the truth. The more I read, the more I saw them for who they really were, not pillars of the community, but predators in tailored suits. I felt a strange calm settle over me, like I'd crossed a threshold I could never uncross. This wasn't just about Sarah anymore. It was about everyone they'd hurt, everyone they'd dismissed as collateral damage. But the deeper I went, the more I felt Sarah slipping away. She'd stopped asking what I was doing, but I could see the worry in her eyes, the way she'd linger in the doorway watching me. One night, she sat me down, her hands trembling as she spoke. "Dan, this is eating you alive," she said. "You barely sleep. You barely talk to me. What are you trying to prove?" I wanted to tell her everything, to make her understand why I couldn't let go. But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I said, "I'm doing this for us. For you." Her eyes softened, but there was something else there, fear. "I don't want this," she whispered. "I don't want you to lose yourself." I pulled her close, promising I'd be okay. But even I didn't believe it. The truth was, I didn't know who I was anymore. All I knew was the fire in my chest, the need to tear down the world they'd built. I started planning. The evidence was damning, but it wasn't enough to just have it. I needed to use it. I contacted a journalist, Emily Chun, who'd written exposés on corporate corruption. We met in a coffee shop, her notebook open, her eyes sharp. "This is big, Daniel," she said, scanning the documents I'd printed. "But it's also dangerous. Your family has connections. They'll fight back." I nodded, my jaw tight. "Let them try." She agreed to investigate further, to dig into the city official and the contractor. I gave her everything I had, knowing there was no turning back. If this went public, it would destroy them. Their reputation, their legacy, everything they'd built. And I wanted it. I wanted them to feel the weight of their own lies. But even as I pushed forward, doubt crept in. Late at night, when the apartment was quiet, I'd think about my mother's laugh, my father's rare moments of kindness, the way Clara used to sneak me candy when we were kids. They weren't monsters. Not entirely. They were flawed, selfish, cruel, but they were still my family. Or they had been. I'd lie awake, wondering if I was doing the right thing, if justice was worth the cost. Sarah's words echoed in my head. "I don't want you to lose yourself." But what if I already had? What if the man I'd been the son, the brother, The husband was gone, replaced by this stranger driven by rage. I didn't know. All I knew was that I couldn't stop. Not now. Not when I was so close. I started noticing cars lingering too long outside our apartment. Phone calls with no one on the other end. Paranoia. Maybe. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. My father had always been a step ahead. Always knew how to protect his empire. I wondered if he suspected something. If Clara had seen something in my eyes that night at dinner. I started being careful. Using a burner phone. Meeting Emily in different places. But the fear was there. A constant hum in the back of my mind. I wasn't just fighting for justice anymore. I was fighting for survival. One night, I came home to find Sarah sitting on the couch. Her face pale. Someone was here, she said, her voice shaking. I heard footsteps outside. And the doorknob, it rattled. Like someone was trying to get in. My blood ran cold. I checked the locks. The windows. But everything was secure. I held her, promising I'd keep her safe. But the truth was, I didn't know if I could. I'd started this war, but I hadn't counted on the collateral damage. Sarah didn't deserve this. She'd never asked for it. But I couldn't turn back now. The truth was out there, and it was coming for all of us. The days blurred into a haze of suspicion and sleepless nights. I'd become a ghost in my own life, moving through the motions of work and home while my mind churned with plans and contingencies. The evidence I'd given Emily was starting to ripple. She'd found a source in the city planning office willing to talk. Someone who'd seen the bribes firsthand. The story was taking shape. A ticking bomb that would blow the Hartwell name to pieces. But with every step closer to exposing them, the tighter the noose around me felt. I'd catch glimpses of the same black sedan parked down the street. Its windows tinted. Its engine idling. I'd hear static on my phone before calls dropped. I told myself it was nothing. Just nerves. But deep down, I knew better. My family wasn't the type to sit idly by while their empire crumbled. Sarah was fraying at the edges. She'd always been strong. The kind of woman who could face a storm and come out smiling. But this was different. She'd stopped sleeping through the night, her eyes darting to the windows whenever a car passed. I hated what this was doing to her. Hated that I'd dragged her into my vendetta. One evening, as we sat in our dimly lit kitchen, she broke the silence. "Dan, we need to talk about this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't just about them anymore. It's about us. What happens if they come after you? After us?" I wanted to reassure her, to tell her I had it under control. But the truth was, I didn't. I was in too deep, and the only way out was through. I reached for her hand, her fingers cold against mine. "I'm going to fix this, Sarah," I said. "I promise. They won't touch you." Her eyes searched mine, and for a moment, I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with fierce, hopeful, unbroken. But then she pulled her hand away, and the distance between us felt like a chasm. "You can't promise that," she said. "You don't even know what you're up against." She was right, and that truth gnawed at me. I'd started this to protect her, to avenge her, but now I was putting her in danger. The irony was bitter, and it tasted like failure. I doubled down, working with Emily to tighten the story. She'd tracked down the contractor, a man named Victor Ruiz, who'd been paid to falsify environmental reports. He was reluctant, scared of the consequences, but I convinced him to meet. We sat in a dive bar, the kind of place where no one asked questions. Victor was a wiry man with tired eyes, his hands fidgeting with a beer bottle. "Your father's a dangerous man, Daniel," he said. "He doesn't just ruin lives. He buries them." I leaned forward, my voice steady. Then help me stop him. Tell me everything. Victor hesitated, then spilled it all: dates, amounts, even the name of the official who'd taken the bribes. It was the final piece I needed. The story was ready. But the closer we got, the more reckless I became. I stopped checking my surroundings, stopped covering my tracks. I was so consumed by the need to see my family fall that I didn't see the trap closing around me. It came in the form of a phone call, late at night, from a number I didn't recognize. I answered, expecting Emily or Victor. Instead, it was Clara. Her voice was cold, sharp as a blade. You're making a mistake, Danny, she said. You think you can tear us down. You're nothing without us. My heart pounded, but I forced my voice to stay calm. I'm not your brother anymore, Clara. You made sure of that. She laughed, a sound that sent chills down my spine. You're playing a game you can't win. Walk away, or you'll regret it. The line went dead, and I sat there, staring at the phone, my hands shaking. She knew. They knew. I didn't tell Sarah about the call. She was already scared enough, and I couldn't bear to see the fear in her eyes grow. Instead, I pushed forward, meeting Emily the next day to finalize the story. We sat in a park, far from prying eyes, going over the details. This goes live next week, she said, her voice steady but her eyes wary. Once it does, there's no going back. Your family will come for you. I nodded, my jaw tight. Let them. I'm ready. But I wasn't. Not really. I'd spent so long planning their downfall that I hadn't considered what it would cost me. My job, my safety, maybe even Sarah. The thought of losing her was a knife in my gut. But I couldn't stop. Not now. That night, I came home to find our apartment trashed. Drawers were pulled out, papers scattered, my laptop gone. Sarah was sitting on the couch, her knees pulled to her chest, her face pale. They were here, she whispered. I was at the store, and when I came back, her voice broke, and I pulled her into my arms, my heart racing. I checked the apartment, but whoever it was had been careful: no fingerprints, no trace. I knew it was them. My father, Clara, maybe both. They were sending a message: stop, or we'll destroy you. But instead of fear, I felt rage. They thought they could scare me into silence. They were wrong. I took Sarah to a hotel, somewhere they wouldn't find us. She didn't argue, but her silence was louder than any words. I could feel her slipping away, her trust in me eroding with every step I took down this path. I'm sorry, I said, sitting beside her on the hotel bed. I never meant for this to happen. She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. I know, she said. But you chose this, Dan. You chose revenge over us. Her words cut deeper than anything my family had done. I wanted to argue, to tell her it was for her. But I couldn't. Because she was right. I'd let my anger consume me. And now we were both paying the price. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, Sarah's breathing soft beside me. The evidence was out there. The story was ready. But I felt no victory. Only loss. I'd set out to destroy my family. But what if I was destroying myself instead? The question haunted me. But it was too late to turn back. The truth was coming, and it would burn everything in its path. The story broke on a Tuesday morning. A headline screaming across the front page of the city's biggest paper: Hartwell Enterprises implicated in bribery scandal. Emily had done her job well too well. The article laid it all bare: the shell company, the falsified reports, the displaced families, the bribes. My father's name was in bold. Clara's right beside it. I sat in the hotel room. The newspaper spread out on the bed. My heart pounding. Sarah was at the window, staring out at the city, her silence heavier than ever. I wanted to say something, to bridge the gap between us, but the words wouldn't come. The victory I'd imagined felt hollow, tainted by the cost. The fallout was immediate. By noon, the story was everywhere online, on TV, trending on X. My phone buzzed with notifications, messages from old friends, colleagues, even distant cousins, all asking if it was true. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. My father's firm issued a statement, calling the allegations baseless and promising a full investigation. But I knew it was just spin. The truth was out, and no amount of PR could bury it. I waited for the call, the one I knew would come. It was Clara, her voice icy when I answered. "You did this," she said. "You betrayed us." I felt a strange calm, like standing in the eye of a storm. "You betrayed yourselves," I said. "This is just the consequence." She hung up without another word, but I could feel her rage through the line. I expected retaliation, and it came fast. That afternoon, my boss called. I'd been fired from the firm effective immediately. No explanation, just a curt email citing restructuring. I wasn't surprised. My father owned half the town, and his influence reached everywhere. I told Sarah, expecting her to be upset, but she just nodded, her face blank. "What's next, Dan?" she asked. "What happens when they don't stop?" I didn't have an answer. I'd been so focused on tearing them down that I hadn't planned for what came after. All I could do was hold her hand and promise we'd figure it out. But the promises felt empty now, like lies I told myself to keep going. The next day, the police showed up at the hotel. 2 officers, their faces stern, asking questions about anonymous tips and stolen documents. I played dumb, but my heart was racing. My father had connections in the department, and this was his move: turn the tables, paint me as the criminal. They didn't arrest me, but the warning was clear: keep pushing, and we'll find a way to bury you. Sarah watched them leave, her arms crossed, her eyes distant. "This is never going to end, is it?" she said. I wanted to tell her it would, that we'd win, but the doubt was creeping in. What if she was right? What if I'd started a war I couldn't finish? I met Emily again, this time in a crowded mall to avoid being followed. She looked exhausted, her eyes ringed with dark circles. "They're coming for me too," she said. "My editor's getting pressure to pull the story. Your father's lawyers are circling." I felt a surge of guilt. I dragged her into this, and now she was paying the price. "I'm sorry," I said, but she waved it off. "Don't be. This is what I do. But you need to be ready, Daniel. They're not going to stop." She handed me a flash drive with backups of everything: documents, recordings, even her notes. "If anything happens to me, you take this to someone else. Don't let them win." I took the drive, my hands steady but my mind racing. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about survival. That night, I got a call from my mother. I hadn't spoken to her since the dinner, and her voice was a shock soft, almost broken. "Daniel, please," she said. "Come home. We can fix this. You're still our son." For a moment, I was a kid again, craving her approval, her love. But then I remembered her smile, the way she'd laughed at Clara's cruelty. "You don't get to call me that," I said. "Not anymore." I hung up, my chest tight. I'd burned every bridge. and there was no going back. Sarah was asleep in the hotel bed, her face peaceful for the first time in weeks. I watched her, wondering if I'd made the right choice, if justice was worth losing everything that mattered. The next morning, I woke to a text from an unknown number, "Stop now, or she pays." My blood ran cold. I looked at Sarah, still sleeping, her chest rising and falling softly. I checked the hotel room. The locks, the windows, everything was secure. But the fear was real now, a living thing that clawed at me. I didn't tell Sarah about the text. I couldn't. Instead, I called Emily, my voice shaking. "They're threatening her," I said. "I don't know what to do." Emily was quiet for a moment, then said, "You need to protect her, Daniel. Get her somewhere safe. Then we end this." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. She was right. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about keeping Sarah safe, no matter the cost. I took Sarah to her sister's house in another state. She didn't want to go, didn't want to leave me, but I convinced her. "I need to know you're safe," I said, my voice breaking. She hugged me, her tears soaking my shirt. "Come back to me, Dan," she whispered. "Don't let this destroy you." I promised I would. But as I watched her drive away, I felt a piece of myself break. I'd started this to protect her, but now I was alone, facing a war I wasn't sure I could win. The only thing keeping me going was the thought of the me father, Clara, my mother, sitting in their perfect world, thinking they'd won. They hadn't. Not yet. With Sarah gone, the apartment felt like a tomb, empty, silent, a reminder of everything I'd risked. I moved to a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, paying cash to avoid a paper trail. My days were a blur of paranoia and planning. I kept Emily's flash drive hidden, taped to the underside of a dresser drawer. The story was out, but my family was fighting back, their lawyers spinning lies, their connections pulling strings. I saw it on the news. Me father's press conference, his face calm, his voice steady as he called the allegations a smear campaign by disgruntled former employees. Clara stood beside him, her smile polished, her eyes cold. They were good at this, better than I'd expected. But I wasn't done. I reached out to Victor again, the contractor who'd given me the final piece of the puzzle. He was harder to find this time. His phone disconnected, his apartment empty. I tracked him down to a construction site, his face pale when he saw me. "You need to back off, Daniel," he said, his voice low. "They know I talked. I've got kids." Man, I felt a pang of guilt, but I couldn't let it stop me. "Help me finish this," I said. "One last piece, and they're done." He shook his head, but after a long pause, he gave me a name: Councilman Barrett, the official who'd taken the bribes. "He's the weak link," Victor said. "But be careful. He's in deep with your father." I thanked him, promising to keep his name out of it. But his eyes told me he didn't believe me. I dug into Barrett, cross-referencing his name with the documents on Emily's drive. He was a small-time politician with big ambitions, the kind of man who'd sell his soul for a favor. I found emails, bank records, even a recorded conversation where he'd promised my father discretion for a price. It was enough to tie him to the scandal, enough to bring him down with them. I sent it all to Emily, who was working on a follow-up story. "This is it," she said when we met at a gas station, her car idling. "This could end them, but it's going to get uglier." I nodded, my jaw tight. "I know. Just do it." The next day, I got another text from the unknown number: "You're making this worse." I didn't respond, but the fear was a constant now, a weight I carried everywhere. I started varying my routine, taking different routes, checking my mirrors. I didn't know who was watching, but I felt them. Me father's people. Clara's. Maybe Barrett's. They were closing in, and I was running out of time. I called Sarah, needing to hear her voice, but she sounded distant. Her words clipped. "Are you okay?" she asked. I lied, said I was fine, but she didn't believe me. "Come to me, Dan," she said. "We can leave. Start over. You don't have to do this." I wanted to, more than anything, but I couldn't. Not yet. Not until they paid. The second story hit like a thunderclap. Councilman linked to Hartwell's scandal. A headline was everywhere. Barrett's name plastered across the news. The evidence was airtight, and the public was furious. Protests started outside my father's office. People demanding accountability. I watched it unfold from the motel, my heart racing. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing one wrong step would send me plummeting. Then Clara showed up. I was leaving the motel when I saw her car. A sleek black SUV parked across the street. She stepped out, her heels clicking on the pavement, her face unreadable. "Get in," she said, her voice flat. Against my better judgment, I did. We drove in silence, the city blurring past. Finally, she spoke. "You think you've won," she said. "You think this changes anything. It doesn't. We'll survive this, Danny. We always do. But you're finished." I looked at her, the sister I'd once idolized, now a stranger. "You hurt Sarah," I said. "You laughed at her pain. You don't get to walk away from that." Her eyes narrowed, but for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt. "You're not a hero," she said. "You're just a man who threw his family away." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She dropped me off at the motel, her parting words a warning. This isn't over. I watched her drive away, my hands shaking. She was right, this wasn't over. But I wasn't the same man I'd been. The boy who'd craved their approval was gone, replaced by someone harder, someone who wouldn't back down. I went back to my room, checking the flash drive, the locks, my phone. I was alone, but I wasn't defenseless. Not anymore. That night, I dreamed of Sarah, her face soft, her smile warm. I dreamed of the life we could have had, the family we'd wanted. But when I woke, the dream was gone, replaced by the cold reality of what I'd become. I wasn't fighting for her anymore. Not really. I was fighting for me, for the part of me they'd tried to break. And I wasn't going to stop until they felt it too. The city was a pressure cooker, the scandal boiling over into every corner of public life. My father's firm was hemorrhaging clients, the stock plummeting, their name dragged through the mud. Councilman Barrett resigned, his tearful press conference a desperate attempt to salvage his reputation. It didn't work. The evidence was too strong, the public too angry. I watched it all from the motel, a strange mix of satisfaction and dread churning in my gut. I'd done this. I'd brought them to their knees. But the victory was hollow, shadowed by the cost. Sarah was still gone, safe but distant. And I was a man on the run, hiding from the very family I'd once called home. Emily called me that afternoon, her voice tense. "They're suing the paper," she said. "Defamation. Invasion of privacy. The works. My editor's holding firm. But it's getting messy. You need to lay low, Daniel." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "What about you?" I asked. She laughed, a bitter sound. "I've been through worse." Just watch your back. I hung up, my mind racing. My family wasn't just fighting to save their reputation, they were fighting to destroy me. I checked the locks again. The flash drive still secure. It was my insurance. My last line of defense. But I knew it wouldn't be enough if they found me. I started thinking about the endgame. What did I want? Justice. Yes. But what did that mean? My father in jail. Clara disgraced. My mother's perfect world shattered. The more I thought about it, the less clear it became. I'd set out to make them pay for what they'd done to Sarah. But now it was bigger than that. It was about every lie, every betrayal, every moment they'd made me feel like I wasn't enough. But the deeper I went, the more I saw myself in the anger, the ruthlessness. Was I any better? The question haunted me, but I pushed it down. I didn't have time for doubt. Then my father called. His voice was calm, almost gentle, like the man who'd taught me to ride a bike all those years ago. Daniel, he said, this has gone far enough. Meet me. Let's talk. I hesitated, my instincts screaming to hang up. But something in his tone stopped me. Why? I asked. So you can threaten me like Clara did. He sighed, a sound I hadn't heard in years. No threats. Just a father who wants to see his son. Against every ounce of sense. I agreed. We set a time and Placia Park bench at dusk. Neutral ground. I told myself I was prepared. But deep down, I knew I was walking into a trap. I got there early, scanning the park for anything suspicious. It was quiet. The air cool. The leaves rustling in the wind. My father arrived alone. His suit impeccable. His face lined with something I couldn't read regret. Maybe. Or just exhaustion. He sat beside me, his hands folded in his lap. You've made a mess, son, he said, his voice low. But it's not too late to fix it. I laughed. A harsh sound. Fix it? You think you can talk your way out of this? He looked at me, his eyes sharp. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about you. You think you're winning, but you're losing everything. Your job. Your home. Sarah. Her name on his lips was a violation, and I felt the anger flare. Don't say her name, I said. You don't get to say her name. He leaned back, his expression unreadable. You're angry. I get it. We hurt her, and you're punishing us. But this isn't justice, Daniel. It's revenge, and it's going to destroy you. His words hit harder than I expected, echoing Sarah's, Emily's, even my own doubts. For a moment, I saw the man I'd once admired, the father who'd carried me on his shoulders. But then I remembered the documents, the bribes, the lives ruined. You destroyed yourself, I said. I'm just making sure everyone knows it. He stood, brushing off his coat. You're my son, he said. I'll always love you. But if you keep this up, I can't protect you. He walked away, leaving me alone on the bench, my heart pounding. I didn't sleep that night. His words kept playing in my head, twisting with Sarah's, Clara's, my own. Was this revenge? Was I any better than them? I didn't know anymore. But I couldn't stop. Not when I was so close. The next morning, Emily's follow-up story hit, detailing Barrett's involvement and linking it directly to my father. The protests grew louder, the calls for arrest stronger. I watched it unfold, waiting for the final blow. But it didn't come. Instead, I got a Packagino return address. Just a USB drive and a note, last chance. I plugged it in, my hands shaking. It was a video of Sarah, walking out of her sister's house, oblivious to the camera. The message was clear. They could get to her. Anytime. Anywhere. I called her immediately, my voice frantic. You need to move, I said. Somewhere they can't find you. She was calm. Too calm. Dan, I'm not running forever, she said. You need to end this. Not for them. For us. I hung up, my mind spinning. She was right. This had to end. But how? I couldn't let them win. But I couldn't lose her either. I sat in the dark, the flash drive in my hand, and made a choice. Not for revenge. Not for justice. But for her. I knew what I had to do. But the weight of it crushed me. Revenge had carried me this far. But it was a fire that burned everything me peace. My marriage. My sense of self. Sarah's voice on the phone, steady but tired, was a lifeline pulling me back from the edge. I couldn't keep running. Couldn't keep fighting a war that was tearing us apart. But I also couldn't let my family walk away unscathed. They'd hurt too many people. Sarah most of all. There had to be a way to end this without losing what little I had left. I spent the night pacing the motel room, the flash drive in my pocket like a grenade. The video of Sarah haunted me, a reminder of how far they were willing to go. I had to be smarter, not just angrier. I called Emily at dawn, my voice hoarse. I need another way, I said. Something that hits them but doesn't destroy me. She was quiet for a moment, then said, There's a federal investigation starting. The evidence you gave might's enough to get the FBI involved. If we push, they'll take it from here. You can step back. Step back. The words felt foreign. Impossible. But I thought of Sarah, of the life we dreamed of, and I knew she was right. I gave her the go-ahead, handing over the last of my evidence. Be careful, she said. They're desperate now? I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Desperate people made mistakes. I was counting on it. I didn't go back to the motel. I moved to a new place, a rundown apartment rented under a fake name. I kept my phone off, used cash, stayed off the grid. The news was relentless. My father's firm was under federal scrutiny. Clara's name dragged through every headline. I watched from a distance, my heart a tangle of satisfaction and guilt. I'd started this, but now it was bigger than me. The FBI raided Hartwell Enterprises, carting away boxes of documents, their faces grim. My father's press conference was a disaster, his composure cracking as he dodged questions. Clara wasn't there, vanished, probably hiding behind her lawyers. My mother called again, her voice shaking. Daniel, please, she said. You're tearing us apart. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not yet. I reached out to Sarah, using a payphone to avoid being traced. She sounded relieved to hear my voice, but the distance was still there. I'm trying to end this, I said. For us. She was quiet, then said, I just want you back. Dan. The real you. Her words were a knife, cutting through the armor I'd built. The real me. I didn't know who that was anymore, but I wanted to find him. For her. I told her to stay safe, to trust me one last time. She didn't promise anything, but I heard the hope in her voice. Faint but real. The break came a week later. Emily called, her voice triumphant. Barrett flipped. She said, He's talking to the feds, giving them everything. Your father's done. I felt the air leave my lungs. It was over. Or it should have been. But the threats didn't stop. Another text, this time with a photo of me at the payphone. You can't hide. I stared at it, my blood cold. They were still watching, still fighting. I knew it was Clarashed always been the ruthless one, The one who'd do anything to protect the family name. I had to confront her. In this once and for all. I tracked her down to a hotel downtown, using a contact from the firm who owed me a favor. She was staying under an alias. But I knew her habits: always the penthouse. Always the best. I didn't call ahead. I showed up, knocking on her door, my heart pounding. She opened it, her face pale but composed. "You're brave," she said, stepping aside to let me in. The room was pristine, like her, but I could see the strain in her eyes. "This ends now," I said. "Call off whoever's following me. Leave Sarah alone." She laughed, but it was hollow. "You think you've won. You've destroyed everything. Dad's going to prison. Mom's a wreck. And for what? Because we hurt your precious wife's feelings." I stepped closer, my voice low. "You didn't just hurt her. You broke her. And you broke me." For the first time, I saw something crack in her guilt. Maybe. Or fear. "I didn't mean," she started, but stopped. "It's too late," I said. "Tell them to stop. Or I'll make sure you go down with him." She didn't answer, but I saw the defeat in her eyes. I left, my hands shaking, hoping I'd done enough. The next day, the text stopped. No more photos. No more threats. Emily's story kept pushing. The feds closing in. My father was indicted. His empire crumbling. Clara disappeared, probably cutting a deal to save herself. I didn't care anymore. I was tired. So tired. Of the anger. The fear. The war I'd waged. I wanted to go home. To Sarah. To the man I used to be. The city felt different now. Quieter. Like the storm had passed. My father's indictment was all over the news. His face plastered on every screen. His legacy reduced to a cautionary tale. Clara was gone. Her whereabouts unknown. Though I heard whispers she'd left the country. My mother stopped calling. Her silence louder than any words. I'd won. In a way. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like loss. Like I'd burned down my past and had nothing to show for it but ashes. I sat in the rundown apartment. The flash drive still in my pocket. A reminder of the line I'd crossed. I didn't know what came next, but I knew it started with Sarah. I drove to her sister's house, the road stretching out like a confession. I hadn't seen her in weeks, hadn't heard her voice in days. The fear of losing her was a constant ache, deeper than any anger I'd felt. When I pulled into the driveway, she was outside, sitting on the porch, a book in her lap. She looked up, her eyes meeting mine. And for a moment, I couldn't breathe. I got out of the car, my steps slow, like I was approaching something fragile. "Dan," she said, her voice soft but guarded. I stopped a few feet away, my hands in my pockets. "I'm done," I said. "It's over." She studied me, searching for the truth. "Is it?" she asked. I nodded, my throat tight. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. For everything." She stood, closing the distance between us, her eyes never leaving mine. "You scared me," she said. "I thought I'd lost you." I reached for her, hesitant, but she didn't pull away. Her arms wrapped around me, and I felt the weight of everything: the anger, the guilt, the fear start to lift. "I'm here," I said. "I'm not going anywhere." We stood there, holding each other, the world falling away. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. We stayed at her sister's for a while, rebuilding what we'd lost. The news faded, the scandal replaced by newer stories. But the scars remained. I got a job, a small one, far from the world of Hartwell Enterprises. It was honest work, the kind that left me tired but not broken. Sarah started smiling again, her laugh filling the spaces I'd left empty. We talked about the future, about trying again, about the family we still wanted. It wasn't easy. There were nights when the guilt kept me awake, when I wondered if I'd done the right thing. But Sarah was there, her hand in mine, and that was enough. One day, I got a letter from my mother. No return address, just her handwriting, shaky but unmistakable. "I'm sorry," it said. "I failed you. I failed her. I hope you find peace." I read it over and over, the words a wound and a balm. I didn't write back. I didn't need to. She'd made her choices, just as I'd made mine. I burned the letter, watching the flames consume it, and felt something release inside me. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But a step toward it. I thought about justice, about what it meant. I'd wanted my family to pay, and they had. My father was in prison, his empire gone. Clara was a ghost, her ambition reduced to nothing. My mother was alone, her perfect world shattered. But justice wasn't the clean victory I'd imagined. It was messy, painful, and it came at a cost. I'd almost lost Sarah, almost lost myself. But I'd found something to a strength I didn't know I had. A love that could survive anything. A chance to start over. Sarah and I moved to a new city, a place where no one knew the Hartwell name. We bought a small house, nothing like the estate I'd grown up in, but it was ours. We planted a garden, laughed over burnt dinners, planned for a future that felt possible again. One evening, as we sat on our porch, the sunset painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, Sarah took my hand. "You're enough," she said, her voice steady. "You've always been enough." I looked at her, my heart full, and knew she was right. I wasn't their son anymore. I wasn't their karma. I was just flawed, human, trying to be better. And that was enough.